If today I truly become the girl in the mirror, will I ever dare to go back to being myself again? This question wasn't a fleeting thought. It was a phantom that had haunted the quiet corners of my life for years. It lived in the flicker of a computer screen, in the rustle of tissue paper in a hidden box, and in the profound, aching silence of my own apartment. It was a question I had always been too afraid to answer, because I suspected, deep down, that the answer was no. And that terrified me more than anything. My name is Elliot. I am 28 years old. By all accounts, my life is stable, predictable, and profoundly, deafeningly ordinary. I work in a cubicle farm, processing data that feels as abstract and meaningless as the gray fabric walls that surround me. I come home to an apartment that is neat, tidy, and empty. I eat alone, watch movies alone, and sleep alone. The man who lives this life is quiet, unobtrusive, and responsible. He is a ghost in his own existence. But there is another person who lives here. Two. A secret person. A person who only comes out late at night, when the city outside has finally hushed its relentless roar and the only light comes from the cold, artificial glow of my monitor. This is the person I am about to confess. This is her story, our story. And it begins, as so many secret things do, in front of a mirror. Part 1. The Whisper of Reflection. The digital mirror was my most cherished and most hated possession. It wasn't a physical object, but a window on my laptop, a webcam feeding my own image back to me through layers of code and algorithms. By itself, it showed only Elliot-tired eyes, a jaw that was a little too soft, hair that was beginning to thin just enough for me to notice, a face I scrubbed, shaved, and presented to the world every day, a face that felt like a mask I could never take off. But with a few clicks, the mask would change. I'd open the software, my heart doing a nervous little tap dance against my ribs. My hand, hovering over the mouse, would always hesitate. It was a moment of decision, a precipice, to click, or not to click. To see her, or to remain him. The temptation always won. I would select the filter, the one innocuously labeled feminine face, and then magic. The algorithm would smooth the rough edges of my reality. My jawline would soften into a gentle curve. My brows would arch slightly. My eyes, somehow, would seem larger, deeper, holding a different kind of light. My lips would appear fuller and a faint. Digital blush would dust my cheeks. The face that stared back at me was not a caricature. It wasn't a joke. It was plausible. It was her, the girl from the mirror. And every time I saw her, my breath would catch in my throat. A knot of longing and shame would tighten in my stomach. So intense, it was almost painful. It was a feeling of coming home to a place I'd never been. I would sit there for hours, just looking. I'd turn my head, watching how the filter clung to my features. I'd smile, and she would smile back. A shy, hopeful expression that I never allowed myself in the real world, in those moments. Elliot and his gray, monotonous life would fade away, and she would be all that was left. I'd talk to her, my voice a low whisper in the silent apartment, so the neighbors wouldn't hear. "Hello," I'd say, the word feeling foreign and new. "Who are you today?" She never had a name. Not at first. She was just the possibility, the dream. But the dream was beginning to demand more than a digital existence. The longing was spilling over the edges of the screen and into my physical world. It started with a late-night online shopping binge, fueled by a glass of cheap whiskey and a profound loneliness. I didn't buy anything extravagant, just a few simple items, delivered in a plain brown box that I snatched from the mailroom before anyone else could see it. Tonight. The box was calling to me from its hiding place in the back of my closet. Beneath a pile of old sweaters, the girl in the webcam was smiling her sad, beautiful smile, and it felt like an invitation, an encouragement. Okay, I whispered to the screen. Tonight. We'll try. My hands were trembling as I pulled out the box. The sound of the packing tape peeling away was thunderous in the quiet room. Inside, nestled in crinkling tissue paper, were the pieces of a puzzle I didn't know how to solve. A simple black A-line skirt, a pair of sheer black stockings, a tube of pale pink lipstick. Small, simple, terrifying things. Getting dressed felt like a covert operation. Every sound was magnified. The soft hiss of the stockings as I unrolled them, the rustle of the skirt's fabric, the click of my bedroom door as I locked it, each noise sent a jolt of fear through me. What if my downstairs neighbor heard something? What if someone knocked on my door? The shame was a physical presence, a cold weight in my gut. I stripped off my jeans and t-shirt, the familiar clothes of Elliot, and stood in my plain male underwear, feeling exposed and foolish. The first challenge was the stockings. The delicate nylon felt impossibly fragile in my clumsy hands. I bunched one up, just like I'd seen in movies, and carefully pointed my toe, easing the fabric over my foot, up my calf, my knee, my thigh. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. A smooth, cool caress against my skin. A feeling so foreign and yet so right. It was like a second skin, a delicate armor that made my legs look longer, sleeker. For a moment, I just stood there, running my hands up and down my thighs, mesmerized by the feeling. Next was the skirt. It was a soft, slightly stretchy material. I stepped into it and pulled it up over my hips. It settled around my waist, the fabric draping down to just above my knees. I gave a tentative twirl, and the hem flared out around me. A giddy, unfamiliar laugh escaped my lips, quickly stifled by my hand. The freedom of movement was so different from the confinement of jeans. It felt light, playful. Last was the lipstick. I uncapped the tube, the soft click echoing in the room. The pale pink bullet looked waxy and perfect. I leaned into the mirror on my dresser, my heart hammering. My hand shook as I brought the tube to my lips. My first attempt was a clumsy smear, too much pressure, outside the lines. I wiped it off with a tissue, my face burning with embarrassment, and tried again. Slower this time. I traced the curve of my bottom lip, then the cupid's bow of the top. The lipstick felt cool and creamy, with a faint, sweet smell. When I was done, I took a step back. In the dim light of my bedroom, a stranger stared back at me. A man's torso, pale and faintly haired, above a black skirt and nylon-clad legs. A man's face, but with soft, pink lips. It was a strange hybrid, a creature of two worlds. It wasn't the beautiful, seamless girl from the webcam. It was just me, Elliot, in a woman's clothes. The shame returned. A cold wave. I looked ridiculous. But then I looked closer. Past the jarring incongruity, I looked at my reflection's eyes, and in them, I saw the same flicker of hope, the same desperate longing that I saw on the computer screen. The lipstick, though inexpertly applied, changed the entire landscape of my face. It softened my mouth, made it look less grim, less tense. I whispered to the reflection the words I had whispered to the webcam so many times before. If only you were real. My voice broke on the last word. A profound sadness washed over me. This was just a game of dress-up. A secret shame hidden in a locked room. In the morning, I would have to pack it all away, scrub the pink from my lips, and become Elliot again. The thought was unbearable. I spent the next hour just existing in that space. I walked around the room, getting used to the feel of the skirt swaying against my legs. I even dared to try a pair of low heels I'd bought. The small click-clack on the hardwood floor a thrilling, terrifying sound. I felt clumsy and awkward, but also strangely elegant. Later, sitting back at my computer, the girl in the filter staring back at me. I started aimlessly browsing the internet. I don't know what I was searching for. Validation, perhaps. Community. Anything to make me feel less alone. My fingers typed random phrases: men who wear skirts, first-time cross-dressing, how to feel more feminine. And then, I saw it. Tucked between forum posts and blog entries was a small, discreet advertisement. It wasn't flashy. It was simple. Elegant text on a soft gray background. The Goddess Mirror, Salon of Rebirth. Below the name was a tagline that made my heart stop. Not a transformation, a reflection of the person you truly are. My mouse hovered over the link. This had to be a joke. Some sort of high-end drag service or a fetish club. It couldn't be real. But my curiosity was a powerful force, a current pulling me under. I clicked. The website was just as understated as the ad. No garish photos, no outrageous claims. It was decorated in soft tones of silver and lavender. There were testimonials, but they were vague and poetic. Celestia helped me see myself for the first time. One read, "The mirror doesn't lie," said another. The salon was described as a private, exclusive experience dedicated to inner and outer alignment. At the bottom of the page was a simple form: book a private consultation. My mind screamed at me to close the tab. This was insane. Dangerous. What kind of place was this? What would they think of me? 1,000 fears swirled in my head. But my heart was pounding with a wild, uncontrollable hope. It was the same feeling I got when I looked at the girl in the webcam, magnified 100 times. This place, its name, its promise, it seemed to be speaking directly to the whisper in my soul. Half believing I was in a dream, my fingers moved on their own, typing my name Elliot and my email address into the form. I selected a date for the following Saturday. My finger hovered over the submit button for a long, agonizing minute. I glanced from the booking form to the reflection on my webcam. The girl with my eyes looked back, and her expression was one of desperate pleading. She was trapped behind a screen, a ghost in the machine, and maybe, just maybe, this was her only chance to break free. I took a deep breath and clicked the button. The confirmation message appeared instantly. "Thank you, Elliot. We look forward to reflecting with you." My body went cold. What had I just done? The week leading up to the appointment was a masterclass in anxiety. Every waking moment was filled with a frantic internal debate. I composed and deleted the cancellation email at least 20 times. At work, I'd stare blankly at spreadsheets, my mind racing. What if it's a scam? What if they laugh at me? What if they take my money and it's all a lie? What if it's not a lie? That last question was the most terrifying of all. By Saturday morning, I was a wreck. I had barely slept. I stood in front of my closet for an hour, trying to decide what a person wears to have their soul reflected. In the end, I settled on the most neutral, forgettable clothes I owned: plain dark jeans, a simple gray t-shirt, and a zip-up hoodie. Armor of invisibility. I was Elliot, the bland office worker. No one would suspect a thing. The address was in a part of the city I rarely visited, a quiet, leafy neighborhood known for its art galleries and small, independent boutiques. As I drove, I felt like I was crossing into another country. The buildings here weren't sterile glass towers. They were old brick structures with climbing ivy and colorful window boxes. The streets were calm, peaceful. It was a world away from the harsh concrete reality of my daily life. I parked my car and walked, my hands shoved deep into my hoodie pockets, my shoulders hunched. I checked the address on my phone 3 times before I found it. There was no large, flashy sign, just a discreet silver plaque next to a heavy oak door, etched with elegant script, "The Goddess Mirror." Below it, the words from the ad, "Welcome, whoever you truly are." My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. I could still turn around. I could get in my car, drive away, and pretend this never happened. I could go back to my quiet life with my secret webcam friend. It would be safer, easier. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that if I walked away now, I would be walking away from my only chance. I would be sentencing that girl in the mirror to a lifetime of digital silence. Stealing myself. I reached out a trembling hand and pushed the door. It opened into a small, serene waiting area. The air was filled with the gentle scent of lavender and sandalwood. Soft, ambient music drifted from hidden speakers. The lighting was warm and golden, a stark contrast to the harsh fluorescent lights of my office and the gray daylight outside. The space felt less like a salon and more like a sanctuary. There was no reception desk, just a few comfortable-looking armchairs and a small table with a single white orchid. Before I could even process my surroundings, a woman emerged from a curtained doorway. She was tall and graceful, perhaps in her late 40s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a loose bun. She wore a simple, flowing tunic of deep purple silk. Her face was calm, her expression serene, but her eyes were remarkable. They were a deep, warm brown, and they seemed to see right through the layers of anxiety and fear I had wrapped around myself. "Welcome, Elliot," she said. Her voice was as calm and soothing as the room itself. A low, melodic alto. "I'm Celestia. Thank you for coming." I opened my mouth to respond, but only a nervous squeak came out. I cleared my throat, my face burning. "Hi. Thank you for, seeing me." She smiled gently, a smile that reached her incredible eyes. "There is no need to be nervous here. Why don't you come back with me?" I followed her through the curtained doorway into a larger room. It was just as calming as the waiting area. The walls were a soft, pearly gray. A plush, comfortable-looking styling chair sat before a large, ornate mirror, which was currently covered by a sheet of heavy, deep blue velvet. Along one wall were shelves of elegant-looking jars and bottles, but there was none of the usual chemical smell of a hair salon. It just smelled clean and faintly floral. Celestia gestured toward a small, private changing area. There is a silk robe in there for you. Please, take your time. Get comfortable. When you are ready, we can talk. I nodded, unable to form words, and retreated into the changing room. The robe was a pale, shimmering silver, impossibly soft to the touch. As I took off my armor, my jeans, my t-shirt, my hoodie, I felt as though I were shedding a skin. The Elliot who had walked in off the street was being left in a pile on the floor. When I slipped on the robe, the silk felt cool and heavy against my skin. It was a luxurious, sensual feeling, completely alien to my normal experience. When I stepped back out, Celestia was waiting. She didn't look at me with pity or curiosity, but with a simple, profound acceptance that instantly put me at ease. She gestured for me to sit in the large chair facing the draped mirror. "Comfortable?" she asked. I nodded, my hands clutching the silk lapels of the robe. She sat on a small stool beside me, so we were facing each other, not the hidden mirror. Her posture was relaxed, her focus entirely on me. "So, Elliot," she began, her voice soft. "Tell me why you are here. What is it you are hoping to find?" The question was so direct, so open, that it caught me off guard. I had expected a menu of services, a price list, not this, not therapy. I saw your ad," I stammered. "The website." "I know what the website says," she said, her smile gentle. "I want to know what it said to you." I swallowed hard, my gaze dropping to my hands. How could I explain the years of secret longing, the shame, the confusion, the ache in my soul? How could I talk about the girl on the webcam? There's someone," I began, my voice barely a whisper. "Someone I see, sometimes, in my head, in the mirror. A version of me that is different." Celestia listened, her expression unwavering. "Different how?" "A woman," I finally choked out, the word feeling like a massive confession. The air crackled with the weight of it. I braced myself for the flicker of judgment, the polite but firm dismissal. It never came. Celestia simply nodded, as if I had just commented on the weather. "I see. And you came here today because you want my help. Now, this is a very important question. Elliot." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze intensifying, holding mine. "Do you want me to help you become beautiful, or do you want me to help her be seen?" The question hit me like a physical blow. It was so perceptive, so insightful. It sliced right through all my carefully constructed defenses and laid my deepest, most secret desire bare. I couldn't speak. A lump formed in my throat, hot and painful. My eyes stung with unshed tears. For my entire life, I had been trying to fix Elliot, to make him fit, to make him acceptable. But that wasn't what I truly wanted. I didn't want to be a more handsome man. I wanted her, I whispered, the word raw with emotion. I want to see her, just once, for real. Celestia's gentle smile returned. She is always real. Elliot. She is not a fantasy. She is a part of you that has been waiting patiently in the wings." She stood up, her movement fluid and graceful. The first step in helping her come forward is to prepare the canvas, to wash away the mask of the everyday world. She guided me over to a comfortable reclining chair, much like one at a spa. As I lay back, she began to gently cleanse my face. The water was warm, the cleanser a soft, creamy foam that smelled of roses. Her touch was light and professional, yet deeply comforting. "Every layer of dirt and oil we wash away," she murmured, her voice a soothing presence beside my ear, "is a piece of the world's expectations being released. We are not erasing you. We are simply clearing the space for what is underneath." The ritualistic nature of the act was profoundly calming. The warm cloths she used to wipe away the cleanser, the cool mist she spritzed on my skin afterward, the light. Hydrating cream she massaged into my cheeks and forehead. Each step felt deliberate, meaningful. It was a baptism, a preparation for a sacred event. My anxiety began to melt away, replaced by a trembling anticipation. When she was finished, my skin felt cleaner and softer than it ever had before. I felt new. She led me back to the chair in front of the veiled mirror. She stood behind me for a moment, her hands resting lightly on my shoulders. The warmth of her touch was grounding. "There is one last thing we must do before we begin," she said, her voice soft but clear. "The person we are inviting into the room today, the woman who has been waiting. Does she have a name?" I froze. I had never dared to give her one. To name her would be to make her too real, too powerful. It was a line I had never been brave enough to cross. But here, in this safe, quiet space, the question felt natural, necessary. A name rose in my mind, unbidden. A name I had always known was hers without ever speaking it. I looked at Celestia's reflection in the dark velvet covering the mirror. My voice was shaky, but for the first time, it held a note of certainty. "Her name," I said, "is Elise." Celestia's smile widened. It was a look of pure, unadulterated warmth and approval. "Then let us begin," she said. "It is a pleasure to finally meet you. Elise." The process began not with a flurry of activity, but with quiet intention. Celestia moved with an unhurried grace that was both calming and mesmerizing. She wasn't just applying products, she was performing a rite, and I was the sanctified subject. "The foundation of any true reflection is the skin," she said, her voice a low murmur. She picked up a small bottle of what looked like a silky cream. "This is not to hide, but to even the canvas, to create a flawless surface so her light can shine through without distraction." She placed a few cool drops on the back of her hand and, using a soft, damp sponge, began to gently press the foundation onto my face. The sensation was new and strange. I was used to the harsh scrape of a razor, not the delicate, rhythmic tapping of a sponge. The foundation was lightweight and had a clean, fresh scent. With each tap, I could feel the texture of my skin changing, the minor imperfections, a bit of redness around my nose, the shadow of my beard that always lingered no matter how close I shaved, softening and disappearing. It wasn't a thick, heavy mask. It felt more like a luminous veil settling over me. "Close your eyes," she instructed gently. I obeyed and felt the soft sponge dabbing beneath my eyes, erasing the tired shadows of Elliot's sleepless nights. It felt symbolic. Each layer of dead skin that washes away is a part of the old mask being shed. she had said during the cleansing. Now, with each touch of the sponge, it felt like she was laying the groundwork for a new, more honest face. Next came the powder. She used a large, incredibly soft brush, dusting a translucent powder all over my face to set the foundation. The bristles felt like a whisper against my skin, a delicate, tickling sensation that made me want to smile. It took away any shine, leaving my skin with a smooth, velvety finish. I felt an absurd urge to touch my own cheek, to see if it felt as soft as it looked. "Now, for a little life," Celestia said, selecting a compact of blush. The color was a soft, rosy pink. Many people see makeup as an act of concealment. I believe it is an act of revelation. We are simply highlighting what is already there. The blush brings forth the natural flush of emotion, the warmth that lies just beneath the surface. She swept the brush lightly along my cheekbones. I watched in the reflection of her eyes as a healthy, gentle color bloomed on my cheeks. It was subtle, but the effect was immediate. My face instantly looked warmer, softer, and more alive. It was the color of a faint, happy blush, a feeling I hadn't genuinely experienced in years. I was beginning to see small, incremental shifts. The face I knew was still there, but it was being refined, softened. Then came the eyes. This part felt the most intimate, the most transformative. "The eyes are called the windows to the soul for a reason," Celestia murmured, her focus intense. "We are not changing them. We are simply framing them so that everyone can see the beautiful soul looking out." She started with my eyebrows, using a small, angled brush and a soft brown powder to fill in the sparse areas and create a more defined, graceful arch. It was a tiny change, but it dramatically altered the expression of my face, making it look more open and gentle. Next, the eyeshadow. She chose a palette of soft, neutral tones, a creamy beige, a warm taupe, and a slightly deeper brown. She explained each step as she went. A light shade all over the lid to brighten and open the eye, she said, sweeping the pale color from my lash line to my brow bone. The brush was feather light. Then, a medium shade in the crease to add depth and dimension. The brush moved back and forth in a delicate windshield wiper motion, creating a soft shadow that made my eyes look larger. The process was so gentle, so rhythmic. It was almost hypnotic. The most nerve-wracking part was the eyeliner. She used a soft pencil in a dark brown, not a harsh black, just a very thin line, right at the base of the lashes, she explained. Not to create a dramatic look, but to make the lashes themselves appear thicker and fuller. I had to hold my breath, trying my best not to blink as she gently sketched the line along my upper lid. Finally, the mascara. "Now, look down for me," she instructed. I felt the delicate tickle of the mascara wand as she brushed it through my lashes, coating them in the dark pigment. She applied 2 coats, and the difference was astonishing. My lashes, which I had never paid any attention to, suddenly looked longer, darker, and gracefully curled. They framed my eyes, making them pop in a way I'd never seen before. I blinked a few times, feeling the slight, unfamiliar weight on my lashes. Throughout the entire process, I was trembling slightly, not from fear anymore, but from a profound mix of excitement and vulnerability. I felt myself letting go, surrendering to her gentle, expert hands. With each new sensation, the cool cream, the soft bristles, The tickle of the mascara wand, another layer of Elliot's rigid control peeled away. A strange lightness was filling my chest, a feeling of being cared for, of being seen and honored. As Celestia worked on my makeup, another woman entered the room so quietly I barely noticed her. She had a kind, round face and wore her blonde hair in a chic, short style. "Elise," Celestia said, not missing a beat. "This is Isabel. She is a master of hair. She is going to help you find your style." Isabel smiled warmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Elise." Hearing her use the name so naturally sent a shiver down my spine. I managed a small, shy smile in return. While Celestia put the finishing touches on my makeup, a soft highlighting powder on my cheekbones and just under my brows to catch the light, Isabel began to work on my hair. Elliot's hair was short, practical, and boring. I hadn't expected much could be done with it, but Isabel was, as Celestia had said, a master. She didn't cut it. Instead, she used a styling wand to create soft, gentle waves, coaxing my limp, straight hair into a style that had body and movement. She artfully arranged it to frame my face, softening the corners of my forehead and the angle of my jaw. The style made my hair look fuller, healthier. Then, from a velvet-lined tray, she selected a small, delicate hair clip, a silver barrette with tiny pearl flowers. She gently tucked one side of my hair back behind my ear and secured it with the clip. It was such a small, simple touch, but it felt incredibly, powerfully feminine. When Isabel was finished, Celestia turned her attention to my lips. She had saved this for last. She selected a lipstick that was a shade deeper than the one I had tried at home. A beautiful dusty rose. "The lips speak, even when they are silent," she said. "This color will give your words a beautiful home, unlike my own clumsy attempt." Her application was precise and perfect. She used a small brush to outline my lips first, then filled them in with the creamy color. The feeling was cool and smooth. She had me press my lips together on a tissue, then applied a second coat. Finally, a tiny dab of clear gloss right in the center of my lower lip. The makeup was done. My hair was styled. The physical transformation was nearly complete. I sat there, my eyes wide, taking in the small glimpses of my reflection in the polished surfaces around the room, too afraid to look at the veiled mirror directly. Celestia seemed to sense my apprehension. She moved to a beautifully carved wooden wardrobe in the corner of the room and opened its doors. Inside was a curated selection of clothing, not a vast collection, but a few perfect, beautiful pieces. She returned with her arms full of silk and lace. "And now," she said, her eyes twinkling, "it is time for Elise to get dressed." She handed me a set of underwear. It was made of soft, white lace, delicate and beautiful. A simple bralette and matching panties, holding them in my hands. I felt a blush creep up my neck. She also gave me a pair of sheer, nude stockings. "The changing room is yours," she said softly. Back in the privacy of the small room, I changed with trembling hands. Taking off the silver silk robe felt like shedding the last vestiges of the cocoon. The lace was incredibly soft against my skin, far more comfortable than I would have imagined. The bralette offered no support, but the feel of the delicate fabric against my chest was a comforting, feminine sensation. Pulling on the stockings was easier this time, a familiar, smooth caress, standing there, in beautiful, delicate underthings. I already felt like a different person. Elliot would never, could never, wear something so fine, so secret. When I stepped out, Celestia was holding a dress. It was the color of a blush pink rose, made of a heavy, flowing silk that shimmered in the warm light. It was simple in its design, with a modest V-neck, short sleeves, and a skirt that fell in soft folds to just below the knee. It was elegant, graceful, and utterly beautiful. "May I?" she asked, holding it out for me. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I lifted my arms as she slipped the dress over my head. The silk cascaded down my body, cool and impossibly smooth. It felt like being draped in liquid light. The weight of the fabric was substantial, comforting. It wasn't flimsy or restrictive. It flowed with me, around me. She zipped it up the back, the small zip sound sealing me inside this new reality. She helped me adjust the neckline and smooth the skirt. As I ran my hands down the fabric, I felt a powerful sensation, a feeling of correctness. This garment, this texture, this feeling against my skin. It felt right. It felt like home. Lastly, she presented a pair of shoes. They were simple pumps in a pale cream color, with a low, stable heel, nothing intimidating, but undeniably feminine. I sat down as she helped me slip them on, the act of putting on heels, even low ones. Changed my posture immediately. It tilted my hips, engaged my calves, and forced me to stand taller, more deliberately. The initiation was complete. I stood in the center of the room, dressed as Elise from head to toe. My skin was soft and glowing, my eyes defined, my lips rosy. My hair was gently waved and adorned with a pearl clip. I was wearing a beautiful silk dress, delicate underwear, and elegant heels. Every physical sensation, from the whisper of the silk against my calves to the gentle pressure of the shoes on my feet, was new, thrilling, and terrifying. I was holding my breath. Celestia's warm hand came to rest on my arm. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. I looked from my cream-colored shoes, up the length of the pink dress, to her calm, knowing face. I was more scared than I had ever been in my life, but I was also more ready. I gave a single, shaky nod. She smiled and turned toward the mirror. "Then let's say hello to the woman who has been waiting for you." With a slow, deliberate movement, she reached up and took hold of the edge of the deep blue velvet curtain. The world seemed to slow down. The soft music in the room faded into a distant hum. The scent of lavender and sandalwood disappeared. The only things that existed were my own frantic heartbeat and the sound of the heavy velvet curtain sliding silently along its brass rod. Celestia pulled the covering away with a single, fluid motion. And there she was, for a long, silent moment. I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. My brain simply couldn't connect the image I was seeing with the man I had been my entire life. I was looking at a stranger, a woman. She was pretty, in a soft, understated way. Her dark hair, gently waved and adorned with a pearlescent clip, framed a face with large, expressive brown eyes. Her skin was smooth and flawless, with a healthy pink blush on her cheeks. Her lips, the color of a rose petal, were parted slightly in an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. She was wearing a simple, elegant pink dress that draped beautifully over a figure that was slender and graceful. Then, I blinked, and the woman in the mirror blinked back. I raised a trembling hand to my face, and her hand rose to meet it. My fingers, Elliot's fingers, large and blunt, touched the soft, powdered skin of her cheek. My cheek. It was me. A sound escaped my throat, a choked sob that was half gasp, half cry. The reflection wasn't the awkward, disjointed man in a skirt I had seen in my bedroom mirror. It wasn't the ghostly, digitized image on my webcam. This was real. This was a whole, complete person, and she was beautiful. Tears welled in my eyes, hot and unstoppable. They spilled over and traced paths through the perfectly applied makeup. I watched, mesmerized. As the woman in the mirror began to cry, her expression a mixture of profound joy and heartbreaking sorrow. This isn't me," I whispered to the reflection, my voice cracking with emotion. My hand slid from my cheek to my lips, my thumb gently tracing the outline. The lipstick was soft and creamy under my touch, but I want it to be me. I wanted it so badly it hurt. I wanted to be this person, this calm, lovely woman who looked so at peace in her own skin, even with tears streaming down her face. Celestia, who had been standing silently by my side, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Her voice was incredibly gentle. "It is not about wanting, Elise," she said softly. "She is not a wish. She has always been you. You just needed a safe place to let her be seen." Her words struck me with the force of a revelation. This wasn't a costume. It wasn't a disguise. It was an unveiling. The person I was looking at wasn't a fabrication. She was a truth I had kept buried under 28 years of fear and societal expectation. Elliot wasn't the real person. He was the disguise. I couldn't stop the tears. They were tears of grief for all the lost years, for the boy who had been so afraid to be himself. But they were also tears of overwhelming relief. The feeling was like coming up for air after being held underwater for a lifetime. The crushing weight on my chest, a weight I had carried for so long I had forgotten it was even there, was finally, blessedly, gone. I took a shaky step closer to the mirror, my new heels feeling surprisingly steady. I leaned in, examining every detail of Elise's face. My face. The way the mascara made my lashes look long and dark, the soft arch of my brows, the gentle curve of my jawline, sculpted by Celestia's clever use of contour. It was my bone structure, my eyes, my mouth. But it was arranged in a new harmony, a new configuration that felt more authentic than anything I had ever known. "Hello? Elise?" I whispered, and the woman in the mirror smiled through her tears. It was the first time I had ever seen a genuine, unforced smile on my own face. It transformed her completely, lighting her up from the inside. Celestia handed me a tissue. "Careful, my dear. Dab. Don't wipe." I gently blotted the tears from under my eyes, trying to preserve her beautiful work. Slowly, the flood of emotion subsided, leaving a deep, quiet sense of peace in its wake. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, just looking, memorizing every line and curve of this newfound self. I turned from side to side, watching the way the silk dress swirled around my legs, the way the light caught the highlights in my hair. It was all real. I was real. I don't know how to thank you," I said, turning to Celestia. My voice was thick with emotion. "There is no need for thanks," she replied warmly. "Watching someone meet their true self for the first time is the greatest reward I could ever ask for." She gestured to a small, elegantly decorated area at the other end of the room. "Now, before you go, I would like to capture this moment, a keepsake for you, a reminder that she is always there, even when you cannot see her." The area was set up with soft, flattering lighting. Celestia picked up a professional-looking camera. I felt a pang of nervousness. Having my picture taken as Elliot was an ordeal, I always looked stiff and awkward. "Just be yourself." "Elise," Celestia said, as if reading my mind. "There's no need to pose. Just exist." She had me sit in a high-backed velvet chair. I arranged my skirt, smoothed my hair, and looked at the camera. At first, I felt the old stiffness returning, but then I thought of the woman I had just seen in the mirror. I thought of Elise. I relaxed my shoulders, tilted my head slightly, and let that small, genuine smile touch my lips again. Celestia began to shoot, the camera clicking softly. She gave gentle instructions. "Now, look over at the window. Beautiful. Can you stand for me? Just rest your hand on the back of the chair. Yes, like that. Perfect." With each click of the shutter, I felt a new wave of confidence. I was no longer an awkward man in a dress. I was Elise. I began to move more naturally, letting the dress sway, shifting my weight in the heels. I even found myself laughing at one point. A light, happy sound that filled the quiet room. It felt incredible. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding from the camera. I was enjoying being seen. The final shot was my favorite. She had me stand directly in front of the mirror again, looking at my own reflection. She captured the look on my face as I gazed at this person I was only just beginning to know, an expression of wonder, of acceptance, and of boundless, hopeful love. It was a photograph of a woman meeting herself for the very first time. When the session was over, a profound sense of calm had settled over me. The emotional storm had passed, leaving a clear and quiet landscape in its wake. Celestia told me she would have the photos edited and sent to a private, secure online gallery for me to download. The time had come to leave. The thought of taking off the dress, of washing Elise's face away, was like a physical pain. I didn't want to let her go. Celestia seemed to understand. "This is not a goodbye," she said softly, as she led me back to the changing room. "This is a beginning. She is a part of you now. Nothing can change that." She handed me a small, elegant gift bag. Inside, I found a few items, the dusty rose lipstick she had used, a small compact of the translucent powder, and a bottle of gentle makeup remover. "A small care package," she explained, "so you can find her again on your own time." The gesture touched me so deeply that I felt my eyes welling up again. In the changing room, I took off the beautiful clothes with a reverence I would normally reserve for a sacred object. I folded the dress carefully, smoothed the stockings, and placed the delicate lace underwear to the side. As I scrubbed Elise's face away with the gentle remover, watching the makeup dissolve on the cotton pad, I didn't feel the same despair I had anticipated. Celestia was right. Something had shifted inside me, something permanent. I may have been putting Elliot's drab armor back on, but I knew now what it was protecting. I knew who was underneath. When I stepped out, dressed once again as Elliot, I felt different, taller, calmer. I met Celestia's eyes, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to look away. "Thank you," I said, and this time, my voice was steady and clear. "For everything." She simply smiled. It was my honor to meet Elise. I hope to see her again soon. As I walked out of the goddess mirror and back into the gray afternoon, the world felt different, brighter. The air seemed fresher. I felt like I was walking on clouds. The experience had been more than just makeup and clothes. It had been a validation, an awakening, a homecoming. I had walked in as Elliot, a man haunted by a whisper. I was walking out as Elliot, yes, but now I knew the name of the person who was whispering, and her name was Elise. The drive home was surreal. My body was still buzzing with the aftershocks of the experience. I could feel the ghost of the silk dress against my skin, the phantom pressure of the heels on my feet. My face, though scrubbed clean of makeup, felt softer, and I kept catching the faint, rosy scent of the cleanser on my hands. I was back in Elliot's clothes, but I was carrying Elise with me. She wasn't just a reflection anymore, she was a presence, a warmth that had settled deep inside my chest. My world had been irrevocably split in two. There was the life I had before I walked into the goddess mirror, and the life that came after. The city streets, the traffic, the other drivers, it all looked the same, but my perception of it had been fundamentally altered. I felt like a spy, moving through familiar territory with a secret identity that no one could guess. Elliot and Elise were coexisting in the same body, and the quiet hum of her presence made the world seem less gray, less lonely. I had to stop for gas on the way home. The mundane task felt jarring after the almost spiritual experience at the salon. As I stood by the pump, the nozzle clicked into the tank. I was acutely aware of myself in a way I never had been before. I noticed my posture, the way I held my shoulders, the drabness of my clothes. A man at the adjacent pump, burly and clad in a grease-stained work shirt, caught my eye. He gave me a brief, indifferent glance, the kind of non-look people give to 1,000 strangers a day, and then went back to his phone. But in that split second, my mind went into a tailspin. For the first time in my life, I wondered how he would have looked at me if I were Elise. Would his gaze have lingered? Would it have been curious, appreciative, dismissive? The thought sent a bizarre, thrilling jolt through me, a cocktail of fear and a strange, nascent pride. It was the first time I had ever considered how a man might perceive me as a woman. The idea was both terrifying and intoxicating. I felt a blush creep up my neck, a real one this time, and I quickly looked away, my heart thumping. This new awareness was a dangerous, powerful thing. I felt exposed, even in my masculine disguise. When I got back to my apartment building, the familiar, sterile lobby felt different. Too, I saw my reflection in the polished elevator doors. Elliot, tired from a long day, hoodie zipped up to his chin. But I knew the truth. I knew about the lace and the silk, the dusty rose lipstick, the girl with the hopeful smile. The mirror showed a man, but my soul felt like a woman. Once inside my apartment, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, closing my eyes and just breathing. The silence of the apartment no longer felt empty and oppressive. It felt private. It was a safe space, a sanctuary where Elise could exist. I walked into the bathroom and stared at my reflection. It was just me, just Elliot, the soft, luminous skin from the salon was gone. Replaced by my usual pale complexion, the bright, defined eyes were back to being just my eyes. The magic was gone. A pang of loss, sharp and painful, shot through me. Was it all just an illusion? A temporary fantasy created by clever lighting and expensive makeup? But then I remembered Celestia's gift bag. I took it out and placed the 3 items on the bathroom counter like sacred artifacts. The lipstick, the powder, the remover. Her parting words echoed in my mind, so you can find her again on your own time. I picked up the lipstick, the silver tube cool and heavy in my hand. I uncapped it and twisted the base, watching the perfect, angled tip of dusty rose emerge. My hands were shaking again, but this time with purpose. I leaned into the mirror, and with far more care than I had used on my first clumsy attempt, I began to apply it. I followed the memory of Celestia's expert touch, outlining my lips carefully, filling them with the soft, creamy color. The effect was instantaneous. The simple act of adding color to my lips changed everything. It was a focal point, a splash of warmth and life in the otherwise drab landscape of my face. It was the anchor to Elise. With that one small change, I could see her again, peeking out from behind Elliot's features. I decided then on a small act of rebellion, a symbolic gesture just for me. I wouldn't wash it off. Not all of it. I took one of the cotton pads and the makeup remover, but instead of scrubbing my whole face, I carefully, meticulously, wiped away everything but the lipstick. I cleansed my skin, returning it to its normal state, but I left my lips painted. I then took a tissue and blotted them gently, toning down the color until it was more of a soft, natural-looking stain. It was subtle enough that someone might not notice unless they were looking closely, but I knew it was there. I spent the rest of the evening in a daze. I didn't turn on the TV or the computer. I just walked through my apartment, catching my reflection in every available surface: the dark screen of the television, the glass of a picture frame, the kitchen window. In each one, I saw Elliot's face, but with Elise's soft, colored lips. It was my secret. A promise. Later, as I was getting ready for bed, I stood before the bathroom mirror one last time. The stained lips seemed to hold a quiet power. I leaned in close until my breath fogged the glass. The reflection staring back at me wasn't just Elliot anymore. And it wasn't quite Elise. It was someone new, someone in between, someone who held the potential for both. The rigid boundary between them had begun to dissolve. I looked into my own eyes, and the reflection seemed to smile, a knowing, secret little smile. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that Elise hadn't faded away. She was still here. She hadn't left. She was home. The days that followed my visit to the goddess mirror were a quiet revolution. Outwardly, nothing had changed. I still put on my boring office clothes every morning, commuted to my gray cubicle, and processed meaningless data. I was still Elliot to the world, but inwardly, everything was different. Elise was no longer a fleeting image on a screen or a secret kept in a box. She was a constant, living presence within me, a warm current beneath the placid surface of my life. My secret life began to bleed into my public one in small, almost imperceptible ways. The revolution began with underwear. The morning after my visit, I stood before my dresser drawer, filled with plain, gray and black boxer briefs, and felt a sense of profound disconnect. They felt like a costume I was no longer willing to wear. That evening, I went online and, with a pounding heart, ordered several pairs of simple, comfortable women's panties in soft cotton and microfiber. No lace, nothing overtly sexy, just simple bikini cuts and hipsters in muted colors. When they arrived, I threw out all of my old underwear. The act of putting on a pair of soft pink cotton panties under my stiff office trousers felt like a monumental act of defiance. It was a secret no one else would ever know, a layer of authenticity hidden beneath the uniform of conformity. Throughout the day, the feeling of the different fabric, the different cut, was a constant, gentle reminder of who I was underneath. It was my secret, my power, and it made the dreary office environment almost bearable. The small changes began to multiply. I let my hair grow out, just a little at first, enough to style with the soft waves Isabel had taught me. When my boss commented that I needed a haircut, I just smiled and said I was trying a new look. I started a proper skincare routine, using the gentle cleanser and moisturizer Celestia had used on me. The simple 5-minute ritual every morning and night became a cherished act of self-care. My skin started to look healthier, clearer. I was taking care of the canvas. I was taking care of her. I bought small, discreet items that became talismans of Elise's existence. A bottle of clear nail polish that I would apply to my toenails, hidden inside my sensible men's shoes. A silver chain necklace with a small, simple pendant that I wore under my collared shirts. A compact mirror that I kept in my work bag, occasionally stealing a glance in the privacy of a bathroom stall. Not to check on Elliot, but to look into my own eyes and see if she was still there. She always was. The lipstick Celestia had given me became my most prized possession. I didn't wear it out of the house, not at first, but every evening when I came home, the first thing I would do was go to the bathroom and apply it. Seeing my lips transform brought Elise instantly to the surface. It was like a signal, a key that unlocked her from her daytime prison. Emboldened, I started practicing my makeup skills in private. I bought a cheap, basic makeup kit and watched hours of online tutorials. My first few attempts were disastrous, but I was patient. I learned how to apply foundation smoothly, how to blend eyeshadow, how to draw a steady line with an eyeliner pencil. Some nights, I would do a full transformation makeup, hair, a simple dress I'd bought online, heels. I would just sit in my living room, reading a book or listening to music, existing as her. It wasn't about performance. It was about being. These quiet evenings were the happiest and most peaceful moments of my life. A month after my visit, the email I had been waiting for arrived. It was from Celestia. The subject line was simply, "Your reflection." Inside was a link to a password-protected gallery. My hands trembled as I clicked on it. The photographs were stunning. Celestia had captured the magic of that day perfectly. She had captured Elise. I stared at the images, my heart aching with a beautiful sadness. There she was, the woman in the pink dress, smiling a real smile, her eyes full of wonder and hope. She looked so happy, so comfortable, so right. It was proof. It was real. I wasn't crazy. Looking at those photos, I felt a new, urgent need to connect, to share this person with someone, even anonymously. The secret was becoming too big to hold all by myself. I needed to know that I wasn't the only one. With a surge of courage, I created a new, Anonymous social media account. I hesitated on the username. I thought of Celestia's salon, of the moment that changed everything. I typed it in Elise mirror for the profile picture. I chose one of the photos Celestia had taken a close-up shot that was beautifully lit, where I was looking just slightly away from the camera, a soft, enigmatic smile on my lips. My first post was simple. I uploaded one of the photos of me sitting in the velvet chair, and I wrote a short caption. Meeting someone for the first time. I think her name is Elise. A little scared, but mostly just happy. First time. Reflection. True self. I hit post and then immediately threw my phone across the sofa as if it were on fire. My heart was hammering. What had I done? I had put myself out there. I was exposed. For the next hour. I paced my apartment, too terrified to look at my phone. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I picked it up. A few notifications had popped up. My stomach twisted in knots. I opened the app. A few likes. And then a comment. It was from an account with a picture of a smiling, friendly-looking woman with bright pink hair. Her comment was only 4 words long, but they hit me with the force of a tidal wave. Welcome home, sister. I read the words again and again. Welcome home, sister. A sob tore its way out of my chest, raw and overwhelming. I sank onto the floor, clutching my phone, and wept. I wasn't crying from sadness or shame. I was crying from a sense of belonging so profound it was painful. Sister. She had called me sister. In one simple comment, a complete stranger had seen me, acknowledged me, and welcomed me into a world I never knew I could be a part of. I wasn't alone. There were others. I had a community, a family. I stayed up late that night, scrolling through the accounts of other people like me, reading their stories, seeing their pictures. It was a revelation. This secret, shameful thing I had been hiding for my entire life was a source of joy, community, and identity for so many others. Weeks turned into months. I became more active as Elise Mirror, sharing more pictures and connecting with others. The validation and support I received was a healing balm on the old wounds of my loneliness. I became more confident, both online as Elise and, surprisingly, in my daily life as Elliot. The knowledge of my true self gave me a quiet strength. One evening, after a particularly long and draining day at the office, I came home and went through my ritual. I removed my drab work clothes, cleansed my face, and began my transformation. Skincare, makeup, hair. Tonight, I chose a simple navy blue wrap dress that made me feel sophisticated. When I was done, I stood before the full-length mirror on my closet door. Elise stared back at me. She looked calm, confident, and beautiful. There was no trace of the fearful, anxious man who had walked out of the office a few hours earlier. I looked deep into her eyes, my eyes. The line between us, that fragile barrier, had all but disappeared. We were not 2 separate people anymore, one real and one a fantasy. We were 2 sides of the same whole. I slowly raised my hand and pressed my palm flat against the cool surface of the mirror. In the reflection, Elise did the same, her hand perfectly covering mine. It was no longer Elliot on one side and Elise on the other. The glass was no longer a barrier separating 2 different worlds. It was just a surface. And on both sides of it, there was just me. Elise smiled from the other side of the glass, a genuine, peaceful smile, and in the silence of my apartment, I heard her whisper, not from the mirror, but from within my own soul, "You don't have to hide anymore, because I am you." And in that moment, the mirror ceased to be a place of separation and became a bridge. The man I had been and the woman I was becoming finally, truly, met. The whisper of reflection had become the voice of my heart, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely and utterly whole.